So let's talk through this a little bit. Just math, folks, and then we'll let you adjourn. Probably take me 15, 20 minutes from, okay? First of all, I want to make sure that everybody understands that we do need to be compliant with potential licensing requirements if we are not a realtor. And every state has different laws. I'm not an attorney, but so you should seek legal advice if you don't know what the rules are, where you plan to operate, or if you just happen to be operating in a particular place. Don't depend on me to advise you because I can't be abreast of every regulation, across all the different municipal areas in the country. But here's what I've personally processed and concluded. A legal opinion could trump this opinion. But generally, and I know there's certain states you definitely can't do this, right? Oklahoma, Illinois, some others are popping up. You can do it in Illinois once, but not more than once. Generally, and that's actually what it says in the law in Illinois. Generally, as long as you're acting on your own behalf as an investor, that's why I always say we ain't finding buyers for the seller. I'm finding a buyer for me. I have a contract to buy from the seller, but I don't want to buy from the seller until I already got my person lined up. It's no different than what happens in all kinds of businesses, consignment business, all kinds of things, like a car dealer. So, I should show you this video. I'll post it on Instagram. So funny. So I sold this Porsche that I have, and the dealer came out to do an inspection on it, and we were disagreeing on the price, so we flipped a coin because we were off by only $1,000. My daughter flipped the coin and I ended up winning, so he ended up having to pay $1,000 more for the car. But in doing so, I also have I have a Range Rover, just kind of like a daily driver type vehicle. I'm thinking about selling it because I got my eyes on something else. And he's like, well, I'll take it. Now he's going to take it obviously on consignment, right? He's not going to give me the money until he already has the money from the buyer. But he is a dealer. He's able to do that. Licensed realtors are able to do that everywhere. But if you don't have a license, then you just need to make sure you're acting on your own behalf. So you don't want to be to a seller of a house. You don't want to be like, I'll get this sold for you. I'll bring a buyer to you. It's no. We'll come up with an agreement, but I can't close with you until I find my buyer. And when I find my buyer, I'll simultaneously close with you, funding my purchase from you out of what I get from my buyer. But I'm your buyer 100%. Now that may change later, but in terms of marketing it and what your intention should be to close with that seller if you're not a realtor everywhere in the country. So as long as you're acting on your own behalf and you're not representing the interest of the seller or conducting business for a fee on behalf of others, that's where licensing is required on things like real estate. And as long as you have a contract which gives you that equitable interest in the property, then generally, remember, a lawyer could trump this depending on where you are. A good lawyer, you have some bad ones who might be wrong, but generally a license isn't required for you to put a property under contract, tell the seller that I'm buying this from you, but I can't buy it until I've lined up my buyer. So I'm going to go out and market for my buyer. Are you okay with that? Because I'm going to put it in the MLS, I'm going to run some ads, I'm going to market to my list, and when my buyer appears, that's when I'll close with you simultaneously. Fair enough? Okay, that is what I'm suggesting that you can do almost everywhere. Not everywhere, but almost everywhere. The states that don't allow you to do that might require a license to assign something like an option. So you just have to calibrate and use the other structures that we've been discussing. Now remember, a sandwich lease is not an assignment, but as we were talking about with Don earlier this week, it's not always allowed. For example, Texas, no sandwich leases, right? You can't lease option a property you don't already own in Texas. Okay, you have to own to lease option, and you still probably don't want to lease option because they only give you 6 months to do it. So what I'm leading up to is having a realtor on your team, husband, wife, mom, dad, son, daughter, very close confidant. Not just some person you met on Craigslist or at a meetup, okay? Somebody really close to you. Because realtors aren't allowed to share commissions, but if you're in the same family, who's going to know, right? Where does the money go? Maybe they keep the money. Maybe they keep the money, but they buy you a barbecue or something like that, right? So anyway, let me show you what's going on here. Let me show you why I'm pressing these buttons. A little bit more legal stuff. This is what I found when dealing with attorneys, and I could show you emails on this, like very recent emails. When you've talked to a lawyer, well, guess what? You've talked to one lawyer. Laws as good of a job as the founding fathers of this country tried to do, which I'd already be in trouble at Coronado High School in Vegas for saying that, because the founding fathers are all terrible people, apparently. I know there were some terrible things that went on back then for sure, but I mean, we still have a pretty doggone good structure of a country. Laws are subject to interpretation, and sometimes great lawyers will interpret things like the Constitution or just addendums, laws, amendments differently. That's why you have Republicans and Democrats who, a lot of them in the House of Representatives and the Senate are lawyers, but they don't agree on anything. Right? 9 justices on the Supreme Court, they sometimes disagree on things. Legal matters are complex, folks. So when you've seen one lawyer, guess what? You've seen one lawyer. So that means I can't 100% trust that what the lawyer told me is definitively, concretely accurate. I've had lawyers say things like sub 2 are illegal, which is clearly ridiculous. So if I'm ever, I forget the name of that song, but if I'm ever told you can't do that here, then I always ask, oh, well, you're probably more informed than I am, but just so that I understand what informs your view on that, would you mind sending me the specific statute? I'd really like to see it because that doesn't seem to be the case elsewhere. Could you send me the specific statute, the specific law, so I could read it and edify myself? Whatever is giving you that opinion that this is illegal. I had someone tell me you can't do a lease option in Chicago. I'm like, well, then I guess I've been violating the law for a long time. Would you mind sending me the statute? Is that something new? I never heard from the guy again, right? Because he's embarrassed. There ain't no statute that says that. Make people prove up. It's kind of like what Ronald Reagan said back in the day to Russia. We trust you, but we're going to verify. We trust you, but we're going to verify. I trust you, Perry Mason, but I'd like to verify it for myself. Would you mind sending me the statute that informs your legal opinion? Do it in a nice way, but they're not going to produce it because a lot of times they're just totally shooting from the hip. Now, I have had lawyers send me the statute, and then I have to call them back and point out, did you notice these exclusions? Well, wouldn't I fall under this exclusion? Oh, yeah, I guess you would. All right, legal opinions are important, but what I'm telling you is don't let people who are shooting from the hip, especially people commenting in social media. Do you know how many people post comments and some of the ads that I have out there and some of the videos that I have out there? And I don't play around. I just block. As soon as I don't even respond. When somebody acts like a jerk, block. But you know how many people I have tell me things like, lease options are illegal in Texas? Well, there's a lot more to that story. They're not illegal in Texas. They're regulated highly. Do not listen to people on social media, really ever, in my opinion. It's wrong. Like probably more than 90% of the time, the comments in social media are wrong. As eloquent and as articulate as someone sounds, it's almost always wrong. And there's not room for dialogue, and there's misunderstandings. Just don't go with that. Don't go with lawyers who are shooting from the hip. It's unqualified. It's uneducated, unless they're able to source where their opinion is derived. And we don't want you to be kept from realizing your dreams, from operating your business, particularly when your business helps people, which it definitely does, and is also highly profitable. So we're going to be trusting but verifying when we deal with attorneys. Get proof, get other legal opinions. If one tells you something that sounds off the mark, please do that. Now, this is what I wanted to get into. This is where the math comes in. Stick with me here. Why do I suggest that y'all go out and get the doggone license? Just get the doggone license. If you can't beat them, join them. Let me look in the chat. It seems like it is necessary to be transparent with the seller on telling them what you're going to do with the property. I always do, Melvin. I always do. I'm like, hey, look, I mean, if they ask, if they don't ask, I mean, it just kind of depends on the situation. But most of the time, they're wondering if I'm going to live in the property or not. I make it very clear I'm not going to live in the property. No. I have buyers that I get qualified for loans. That's how I get paid. When that loan comes in, that gets you paid off. But you want too big of a down payment, too big of a monthly, too short of a term, too much price, whatever the situation is. So I can't close with you next week like I do with most of the buyers that I buy from. But I do like the fact that you seem easy enough to work with. You want too much money on this or whatever, but let's go ahead and write up the agreement. That'll give me the ability to go out to my market, go out to my list, go out to my folks, see who I have, and see if I can actually fund this deal so that you can get paid out of the money that I'm going to have coming in from my buyer. So So yes, I am going to be not living in the house. I'm going to be reselling your property for profit. That's what I do. You don't mind if I make a profit, do you? Basically goes like that. Super transparent, super cool, super collected, super chill, super easy. Special teams, special plays, special players. What's up, brother? Any of you know what I'm talking about? Anybody who knows what I'm talking about, put it in the chat. Otherwise, I just feel foolish. Okay, here's why I suggest getting a real estate license. And Melvin, let me know if that answered your question. The main reason is this: extremely profitable with where the prices of houses are today. And it allows you to be more cool, calm, collected on the phone with the seller. Because you know if they're not going to sell you the house in the way that you want to buy it, they only have one game in town. That's the traditional route of sale. And you can pick up that listing either for you or the close confidant that I mentioned earlier. When that close confidant has the realtor license, they're also going to have thanks, Ronnie. They're also going to have access to the MLS, which is huge for you. Way easier to do comps on the MLS. Way easier to see properties that come up. You can be first to get offers in on, like bank-owned properties and whatnot. All kinds of information available to you on the MLS. It's a great tool to have that's not expensive. Way better than PropStream. PropStream, Freedom Soft, that's all good, but MLS is way better. Being licensed, it adds tremendous credibility, and I will argue with anyone who says that it doesn't. And the reason is because if you're an investor, you're not regulated under any licensing board. You're just some person who went through like a training like this, and you can just go act however you want with no repercussions, right? That's fine. But to a seller, being able to say, hey, look, I do happen to have a real estate license, but I'm not trying to get a listing on this house. I know you're getting called from a bunch of people who are trying to get a listing on this. I actually am a buyer. I just went and got the license just so that if you can't sell the house to me in the way I want to buy, I could still potentially help you out. But that's not what I'm calling. I'm calling to talk to you about buying the house. But you should feel more comfortable about me buying your house just based on the fact that I do fall under a code of ethics. I have a license. Bad behavior can get reported. Ramifications, consequences can happen to me if I did anything untoward. So I like having the license because it ought to make you feel a little bit more comfortable who you're dealing with versus just some Joe Schmo who saw, you don't know where they come from, what hole in the ground they crawled out of. There's requirements to become a licensee. But again, I'm not trying to broker your real estate. I'm trying to buy it. Now, if you won't sell it in the way I want to buy it, you probably are going to need someone to broker it, and I'll help you out. I won't make nearly, the kind of money that I usually make, but I'll be willing to help you so that you net the most amount of money for your house. Okay, so yeah, I totally agree, Melvin. Telling them that will get them to be more open. You want people to drop their resistance, and when they get a sense that they can trust you, you'll get much deeper level conversations with people. Now, I say being licensed adds tremendous credibility. As long as you lead with the fact that you're a real estate buyer, you're only licensed so that you can be more robust in your service offerings to the buyers, to the sellers that you transact with or cannot transact with as a buyer or a seller. You can let people know that I understand why you don't have this listed with a realtor. I can't stand the whole industry, to be honest with you, but they have a monopoly out here. So I figured if you can't beat them, join them, and I'll at least make it tolerable for the people who need them. And so what happens is you're just going to, the other thing about having the license is it eliminates all those issues that I talked about earlier with equitable interest. It eliminates those issues with assignments, perceptions of brokering, real estate without a license. You put yourself in a better position. And then the main thing is this, and I'm going to show you this in a sec. Here's the math coming up next. It positions you for a very high conversion ratio. More deals because you have a full slate of offerings. Especially if we use 100% brokerages that are going to hang our license. You're just paying like a few $100s per transaction instead of sharing in your commission. You can list all of your properties that you're buying as an investor and get them sold much more quickly without even having to pay like a flat fee. You got to pay still a transaction fee, but you don't have to do a whole flat fee listing or anything like that. Now, let me point out to you why this is. So maybe if you want to get a pen out, go ahead. But if you can follow, you'll probably be able to follow this math in your head. So let me explain here because this is where people get shocked at actually how much money you can make. Now, I want to remind you, I'm not talking about going out and acting as a realtor as your main gig. I'm talking about using the realtor license as a backup to your investment activities. We want you to be buying and selling properties as an investor, as a buyer and seller. However, in doing that and trying to acquire properties, there's going to be more people who don't want to sell to you the way you want to buy than people who do. And almost 90% of those people are going to end up listed with a realtor who called behind you just trying to solicit a listing. So you get to a point where you say to yourself, that should be my listing if I just had the doggone license or someone on my team. And let me show you how much money we're talking about here. Okay, you see this first bullet? It says 100 calls equals 25 hours. You're not going to spend more, unless you have diarrhea of the mouth, you're not going to spend more than 15 minutes on average. I know some people it'll be 30, 45 minutes maybe. But on average, across a large sample of people, you're only going to be averaging 15 minutes on the phone with each of the people that you talk to. So if that's true, that means you could talk to 4 people in an hour. Easy. Super easy. That's very liberal. You actually should have a lower average, 5-10 minutes, right? 15 though is liberal. That means 4 people an hour. So if you talk to 4 people an hour and you do it an hour a day for 25 days out of a month, taking 5 days off, you would get through 100 people in a month, wouldn't you? You see the math? 4 people an hour times 25 hours is 100 calls. Let's say you suck. Almost everybody sucks at first. And you get one of like the kinds of deals that we've been talking about out of 100 people. 1 out of 100. Well, those, just the front end payday on those deals, if you're calling like median price houses, 300, 400,000, you get a $25,000 payday just on that one deal up front, not including the cash flow, not including the debt pay down, not including the potential equity in the deal, the appreciation, the forfeited deposits, all that kind of stuff. We're being really conservative. That's 1 out of 100. So just doing that with no realtor license, no nothing else, that means in 25 hours, because you made $25,000, you got paid $1,000 an hour. Pretty good rate. It also means you could look at it as being paid $250 per call. However you look at it. Now, when I first said 100 calls, probably a lot of you were like, that's a pain in the ass. I don't want to do that. But if I signed you up for a job that said you get $250 per call, everybody would probably sign up for that deal. See, it's just this kind of this mental thing that we have sometimes about, I'm going to get told no a lot of times. Well, you get told no a lot on your way to a yes, and you improve your skills along the way. It's a very high-paying job being an investor, but check this out. Check this out. What about when you add that realtor piece in? If you sucked to the point of only getting 1 out of 100, what does that mean? 99 people were no's. 99 people wouldn't, if you're following the scripts, the approach, the way that we talk to sellers, they are not going to do a deal where they are willing to take monthly payments for a period of time, and they are not going to discount their house significantly from its value. So what does that mean? That means they ain't selling that house unless a realtor is involved, because they're fishing in that pool of a retail price paying owner-occupant, bank-qualified buyer, and 100% of those people are represented by realtors. So they can't get out. They cannot fish for a fish who's swimming in a pond and catch that fish because without a realtor being involved, because all those fish have agents. So that means of those 100 people you talk to, let's say 90 of them, and if you could track this yourself, just keep track of it. 90 of them, that house is going to end up on the MLS or be sold in some way where a buyer's agent came in and got a realtor commission. So if 90 of them are going to end up paying a commission to that realtor, you had them on the phone before it was listed. What if you got a third of those deals? What if you got a freaking 10th of those deals? That's 9 listings. If you just got a 10th, that's 9 listings. Just getting good at the total script where we throw in the realtor piece. And even if you got a pathetic amount of commission, 0.5 point, 1 point, 1.5, you could get all the way up to 3.5 points, really. 9 deals. Let's just say you're getting 1 point and you're giving like, I don't know, 2.5 points to the buyer's agent who comes in. That means it's a total 3.5% commission. Now I know the rules are changing, but it still stays the same, because the offer that comes in from the buyer's agent is going to say seller's responsible to pay the buyer's commission. So that would be a total 3.5 points. But if you sign a listing agreement when the new rules go into effect at a 1% listing, which people are going to be willing to do, think about 9 houses. That's getting 1/10. 1/10. Remember, all of them are going to be listed or are going to have a realtor involved. These are $400,000 houses. 1 point is $4,000. $4,000 times 9 deals. That's $36,000 a month just on the crap you were going to throw away spending 1 hour a day so you could get through 100 people. What if you have a better batting average than that? Folks, it's at least an extra $250,000 a year to a lot more. Just getting this piece in. Go get the 60 to 90 hours in. I'm not going anywhere. I'm still going to help you. Your stuff with me never expires. So if you have to lay low for a little bit while you go get that license, it'll help you a lot more when I come in and help you on these deals. That's why I want you guys to do this. I don't get paid out of that, but I want you to make a lot of money so that you'll go do bigger deals that I can potentially be involved in.